Something was not right, my neighbor smiled at me this morning, and something about it made me lock my door and sit on the floor with my back against it for 20 minutes. I know how that sounds. I know a smile is just a smile, but you have to understand I've lived next to this man for almost 2 years, and in that entire time, he has never once looked directly at me. Not once. He's the kind of person who stares at the ground when he walks, who turns away when you pass in the hall, who seems to go out of his way to avoid any kind of contact. I stopped trying to say hello to him after the first month. I figured he was just private. Some people are like that. I respected it. I forgot about him, mostly so when I came out of my apartment this morning and he was standing right there in the hallway. Already facing me, already smiling. I felt it in my stomach before I understood why. Something was not right. The smile was wrong. It was too wide, too deliberate, too long. It lasted a full second past the point where a normal smile ends. And then he said my name, my first name, the one I had never told him. I said good morning. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button and waited and did not look back, and when the elevator opened, I stepped inside and turned around, and he was still standing there, still watching me, and the smile was finally gone, but somehow what replaced it was worse. I went to work. I tried to forget about it. I sat at my desk and stared at my screen and kept replaying at the width of that smile. The specific comfort in his voice when he said my name, the way he had been positioned in the hallway as though he had been. Standing there for a while before I came out. I spent the whole day failing to think about anything else. I need to give you some context because this isn't just about one unsettling moment in a hallway. This has been building for a while. I just didn't see it clearly until today. Now that I'm looking back, I can see the shape of it, and the shape of it scares me more than any single piece of it does on its own. It started maybe 3 months ago. I work from home 2 days a week, and I started noticing, on those days specifically, that I could hear my neighbor moving around in his apartment in a way that seemed to track my movements and mine. I would get up to make coffee, and I would hear footsteps on his side of the wall, moving in the same direction. I would go back to my desk, and a minute later, I would hear him settle too. I told myself it was coincidence. Thin walls. People have similar rhythms. I let it go. Then I started noticing his car. I drive to the office 3 days a week. Same route every time. Same turns. And maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago I started seeing his car, a dark gray sedan, same model, same dent on the passenger side rear door in places I had no reason to see it. On the street near my office building, twice, parked and facing my direction. In the parking lot of the grocery store I go to on Thursdays, 3 rows back from the entrance. Once on the highway, 2 lanes over, staying exactly at my speed for almost 15 minutes without passing or falling behind, just holding that distance like he was anchored to me, before eventually taking an exit I'd never taken. Each time I saw it, I felt something cold and specific settle in my chest. That kind of quiet alarm your body recognizes before your mind is willing to. I noticed it, but I kept finding other explanations. Coincidence? Common car? One kept placing those explanations between myself and the only interpretation that actually fit. Because if I faced it directly, if I said out loud what I suspected, there was no version of that truth that didn't terrify me about 3 weeks ago. I got back from work to find my doormat slightly moved. Not dramatically, just turned. Maybe 30 degrees from where I always kept it. That's the kind of thing that could mean anything. Building staff, someone leaning against the door, air pressure in the hallway. I straightened it and went inside. 2 days later, it was moved again. That time I stood and looked at it for a long moment. Then I took a photo on my phone. Not because I had a plan, just because some instinct told me to document it. I went inside and made dinner and tried to watch something on TV, and couldn't follow any of it because I kept looking up at my front door. Nothing happened. Nothing that night and nothing the next week. And I started to relax again, and then this morning happened, and now I'm sitting on the floor of my apartment piecing it all together, and I'm having trouble with my breathing. Here is what I keep coming back to: the name. He knew my name. My first name, used comfortably, casually, like someone who has known you for a while. How does a person who has never spoken to you know your name? There are explanations. Mail, a package delivered to the wrong door, my name on a label somewhere. But the way he said it, not as a question, not tentatively the way you say someone's name when you're not quite sure you've got it right. He said it as a statement, as a fact that he had already confirmed and was comfortable with. I kept thinking about that all day. I kept thinking about what else he might know. When I got home from work, I checked my front door for the first time for signs of tampering. I don't have a camera in the hallway. I had thought about getting one. Told myself I'd get around to it, the way you always tell yourself you'll get around to things. The lock looked fine. The door frame looked fine. I went inside and I checked. Every room and everything was where I left it, and the windows were all latched, and I was alone. Completely alone. I sat down at my kitchen table and tried to think clearly. He knows my name. He's been in places I've been. He can hear me through the wall. And this morning he stood in the hallway facing my door as if he had been waiting for me, as if he knew exactly when I was going to come out. There are people in my life I could call. My sister, a couple of close friends. I thought about calling them. But what would I say? That my neighbor smiled at me and knew my name, and I had seen his car a few times, and my doormat had been moved. None of it sounds like enough. None of it sounds like anything except paranoia. I know how these conversations go. The careful, kind voices, the gentle suggestions that I might be stressed, that I might be reading into things. I wasn't ready for that. I needed to be sure first. So instead I opened my laptop and I searched his name. I didn't actually know his name, just the one on his mailbox. I searched it, in his general location, and I started reading. I found a social media profile. Private, but the profile photo was visible. It was him. And underneath the profile photo, in the small strip of information that's visible even on private accounts, there was a location tag, the name of this building, and a date the account had been created about 8 months ago. I had lived here for 2 years. He had lived here for 2 years, but he made that account 8 months ago. That wasn't remarkable on its own. People make accounts late. Fine, I kept looking. I found something else. An old post on a community forum, attached to the same username. It was about 3 months old. It was asking for advice about a neighbor. The post described a situation, a neighbor who kept strange hours, who had packages delivered frequently, who sometimes had visitors late at night. Nothing accusatory, just observations, described in detail, framed as concern. I read it twice before I realized what I was reading. He was describing me, not with my name, but the details were specific enough. The late packages I do online shopping, I work odd hours. The visitors, I have friends over sometimes on weeknights. Kept strange hours. I'm a night person. My lights are on late. He was posting about me on a community forum 3 months ago, gathering opinions about me, building a narrative about me. I closed the laptop. I sat very still. Outside in the hallway, I heard a door open and close. I heard footsteps. They stopped outside my door. I watched the shadow at the bottom of the door. I watched the light change in that narrow strip of space, the way it changes when someone is standing on the other side. I did not move. I did not breathe. After maybe 30 seconds, the shadow moved. The footsteps continued down the hall. I heard the elevator. I put my phone in my hand with my sister's number ready to dial. Then I did something I can't fully explain. Instead of calling her, I went back to looking. I think some part of me needed to understand the complete picture before I could talk to anyone. I needed to know how bad it was. I searched the forum username across other platforms. I found 2 more accounts. One was mostly inactive, but the other had posts going back about 7 months. Most of them were innocuous, but there were 2 posts, buried between normal-looking content, that I had to read 3 times before I accepted what they were. They were photos, taken from a window, looking down at a parking lot. My building's parking lot. My car in the frame. The timestamp on the first photo was from 5 months ago, taken at 11:48 at night. The timestamp on the second was from 2 months ago. My car, in the dark parking lot, at nearly midnight. His window faces the parking lot. He had been photographing my car from his window and posting the photos online. There were comments on the photos. Most of them nothing. People asking what kind of car it was. Random observations. But one comment on the second photo, posted by a different account that had been created the same week as the photo, said, "Is she still doing the same thing?" He had told someone else about me. Someone else knew which car was mine. I locked every window. I went room to room and checked every latch twice. I pushed a dining chair under the front door handle. I was moving fast, and my hands were not entirely steady. I called my sister, and when she picked up, I started talking, and it came out wrong. Jumbled, too many things at once, and she had to ask me to slow down twice before she understood what I was saying. Her voice changed when it finally landed. She told me to come over right now, tonight, immediately. She would be awake and waiting. "Do not stay there," she said. "Just come." I said okay. I started throwing things into a bag. I was halfway through packing when I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. Some feeling. The sense that something in the room had changed. The way you sometimes feel when the air pressure shifts before a storm. I stood in the middle of my bedroom holding a sweater and I listened. The apartment was quiet. My bedroom faces the back of the building, away from the hallway. The window was latched. Everything was where it should be. But I had that feeling, heavy and cold and specific, that I was not alone. Turned and looked at the closet. The door was open about an inch. I always kept it closed. Always. I stared at that inch of darkness for a long moment. Then I walked over slowly and pulled it open all the way, and it was just my clothes. Just the ordinary contents of a closet, and I stood there breathing hard. And then almost laughed at myself. But I kept packing faster after that. I zipped the bag and slung it over my shoulder and picked up my phone and my keys. I took one last look around the bedroom, the ordinary familiar room I had slept in for 2 years, the window I had looked out of every morning. The closet door now open and showing only my things. Then I went to the front door. I pulled the chair away and set it aside. I put my hand on the deadbolt and started to turn it, and then I heard something that stopped me completely and made my hand go still. From the other side of the door, very faint, the sound of breathing, not movement, not footsteps, just slow, steady breathing, right on the other side of the door. So close it would have been almost inaudible if the apartment hadn't been completely silent. I stepped back. I looked at the shadow under the door, and there it was, the change. In the light, the subtle blocking of the corridor light at the bottom of the door, someone was standing directly outside my apartment. I dialed my sister. I didn't say anything when she picked up. I just held the phone and watched the shadow and listened to the breathing. She was saying my name, asking what was happening. I still couldn't speak. Then the breathing stopped. The shadow didn't move. They were still there, but they had heard. The call connect, heard my sister's voice through the phone, and something had changed in the quality of the silence. And then the shadow shifted. The light came back under the door. Footsteps, very quiet, moving away. I stood there until I couldn't hear anything. Then I waited 5 more minutes. Then I left. I went fast, bag over my shoulder, phone still connected to my sister. I did not look toward his door. I went straight to the elevator and I did not look back. My sister met me at the door. She took one look at me and put her arms around me and didn't ask anything for a while. When she did ask, I showed her everything. The screenshots, the forum posts, the photos of my car. She called the police. They came and took a statement and said they would look into it. They used the word harassment. The officer who took my statement wrote everything down carefully and didn't minimize any of it, which helped and also made it more real in a way that was hard to absorb. They told me not to go back to the apartment alone and to preserve all the screenshots and account information I had found. That was last night. This morning I am sitting at my sister's kitchen table and I've been awake since 4 a.m. and I keep going back to the timeline. 3 months ago he was posting about me on a forum. 8 months ago he made a new account. But he has lived in that building for 2 years. I've lived there for 2 years, which means there are 18 months of whatever this is. 18 months before he started posting. 18 months before I noticed anything that I don't have any information about. 18 months of living next door to someone who was watching me. And I had no idea. I passed him in the hallway. I rode the elevator with him. I existed 12 inches away from him through a shared wall, night after night. And I didn't know. The police called this morning. They spoke to the building manager. They asked about my neighbor. Apparently, 3 other tenants in the building had filed informal complaints about him over the past year for loitering in the hallway, for being seen near other tenants' doors late at night, for one incident where a woman on the 2nd floor said she found her doormat moved repeatedly over several weeks and later found a mark on her lock at the building. Manager dismissed at the time. Her doormat, the same thing that happened to me. She had filed that complaint 14 months ago. He was already doing it then. He has been doing this for at least 14 months across multiple tenants in the same building. And every single time it was dismissed or explained or allowed to fade. I asked the officer who called me what was going to happen next. He said they were still assessing. He said that a lot of what I had found was concerning, but that they needed to establish clear criminal intent. He said to stay somewhere safe, and they would be in touch. He used the word concerning. I'm trying to figure out what to do with all of this. I'm trying to figure out how you go back to a life where you felt safe, when you now understand that the feeling of safety was just ignorance. I lived next to that man for 2 years. I slept 8 feet away from him, 1 wall between us. I went to bed believing my locks were enough and that the world outside my door was ordinary. But he knew my name. He had been photographing my car. He had been standing at my door in the dark. And when he smiled at me in the hallway yesterday morning, wide and slow and deliberate, and said my name in that comfortable way. I think he was telling me something. I think he was telling me that something was ending, that the part where I didn't know was over, because he wanted it to be over, because he had decided to let me see. That's what I can't stop thinking about. He didn't slip up. He chose that moment. He wanted me to know, which means everything before it, every careful, quiet, invisible thing he did was intentional, controlled, deliberate. He is not impulsive. He is patient. He plans. He adapts. He watches and waits and moves carefully, so that each individual piece of what he does looks like nothing, like coincidence, like the ordinary noise of daily life. He has been patient for a very long time, long enough that I never saw it coming, long enough that I felt safe, and I still don't know what he was waiting for. I don't know if he found it. I don't know if whatever he was slowly building toward is finished now, or if it is still happening right now, in ways I haven't discovered yet, in ways I might not discover until it's too late.